Shri Ganeshaya Namaha, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Dear friends, today is a very auspicious day, Buddha Jayanti. The glory of Bhagavan Buddha is being celebrated or commemorated all over the world. My heart is filled with joy, is exhilarated even to hear the sacred name of Bhagavan Buddha. Buddha's teachings are always an integral part of Hindu Dharma. It is very unfortunate, to put it in the words of Swami Vivekananda, that Buddhism or Buddha's teachings have walked out of Hindu society, and Buddha's vision and teachings are celebrated outside of India, in the countries surrounding India on all sides, more than within India itself. Swami Vivekananda emphatically presented a vision. He emphatically pointed out that Buddhism walking out of India, going out of India, is a big loss to Hindu Dharma, Hindu society. In a way, the history has corrected this loss of Hindu Dharma, maybe partially, when Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar tried to revive Buddhism by embracing Buddhism instead of embracing some other religion. When you think of Buddha, two other names come to my mind. They come to mind spontaneously. One is Socrates and the other is Jesus Christ. Buddha was opposed to the Vedic orthodoxy, the ceremonialism and ritualism of the Vedic Brahmana texts, as much as Socrates was opposed to the state religion of Athens, and Jesus Christ was opposed to the orthodox Jewry of his time. When we look at these three great savants or saint philosophers, and then notice that Socrates was poisoned for his vision, for his thinking. Jesus Christ was crucified for his views, whereas Bhagavan Buddha lived to a very ripe old age. When we compare this situation that way, our heart is filled with joy because it speaks volumes about the inclusiveness of Hindu Dharma. Then we are the students of Vedanta, and while studying Vedanta, one thing becomes very clear to us, namely, the vision of Buddha, the philosophy of Buddhism, is very close to the Advaita Vedanta, the non-dualistic philosophy of Shankara. If you look at the social situation, you find a very peculiar situation in which the Shankara's Advaita philosophy is celebrated together with dualistic philosophies and religious sects, all as part and parcel of the great Hinduism, under the canopy of the same Hinduism. So the dualistic philosophies and the dualistic religions are celebrated or practiced together with Shankara's non-dualistic philosophy, whereas somehow Shankara's non-dualistic philosophy is, there seems to be a schism between Buddhist philosophy and Shankara's philosophy. At least at the societal level, we get such a feeling. This is an unfortunate development because the fact of the matter is Shankara's philosophy is more akin to Buddhist philosophy than the theological dualistic philosophies, so-called philosophies. They are more theologies of dualism rather than philosophies. They do not have anything in common with Shankara's non-dualistic philosophy, whereas there is so much in common between Shankara's philosophy and Buddha's vision or Buddhist schools of thought. The Kshanika Vijnanavada, which is an important school of Buddhism, is an Advaita school. They are not dualists. For them, the real is a non-dual Vijnana. Vijnana is the reality, non-dual reality. That is how they present it. Only difference between the Vijnana, the non-dual Vijnana of the Buddhist school and the non-dual reality as presented by Shankara is that Shankara's non-dual Brahman is timeless, whereas the Vijnana of the Buddhist school is time-bound. It is Kshanika. So except for that element of time, they are both very parallel. And when it comes to negation of the world as real, they both move very close to each other. They run very parallel to each other. The Kshanika Vijnanavada and Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, they are very close and very parallel to each other in the aspect of negating the reality of the world. Therefore, Kshanika Vijnanavada is closer to Shankara's non-duality than any of these theological dualistic religions which are part and parcel of Hinduism. This is an interesting paradox that you can observe in the social practice of religions. Also, there is a Shunyavada, one of the many schools of Buddhism. And the Shunya of the Buddhists is not entirely different from the Brahman of Shankara's non-dualistic philosophy. The only difference between Shunyavada and Advaita Vedanta is, in Shunyavada, the real is Shunya, that is also non-dualistic because Shunya is a non-dual. Whereas in Shankara's philosophy, the real is the awareness, the Chaitanya which is aware of this void. That is the only difference. Except for that important difference, in all other respects, there is no difference of thinking, because Shunyavadis dismiss the world as an entity as much as Advaita Vedantins do. It is interesting to note that there is a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam which compares the Brahman with Shunya. It says, Viyata ivapadasya tava shunyatulam dadhataha. So the Shrutis are praising the glory of the Brahman, and they say, O Brahman, you do not have a form or a name, and you do not have any limitations of a physical entity. You are boundless as a space, and you have a nice resemblance with the void. Like that Brahman is described. So this shows how much kinship is there between the different schools of Buddhist philosophy and Shankara's non-dualistic Vedanta. Then finally, I will discuss a topic of Buddha being venerated as God incarnate in the Hindu philosophy. In Hindu Dharma, they speak of 10 God incarnates, Dashavatara, and one of those avatars is Buddha. In fact, Jayadeva in his song says, Nindasi yajna vidhe rahaha shruti jatam sadaya hridaya darshita pashughatam Keshava dhruta buddha sharira jaya jagadisha hare. Therefore, it is very much in the fitness of things that Hindus venerate Bhagavan Buddha as God incarnate. It is very nice to note that we worship Lord Rama as incarnate, God incarnate, and then we worship Lord Krishna as God incarnate, and then we worship Bhagavan Buddha as God incarnate. Three historic figures are worshipped as God incarnate. That is, Dashavat, out of Dasha, 10 incarnates, 3 of them are historic figures. That is a very happy thing to note. In this context, I want to point out a mischievous story that is current in some of the Hindu circles. The orthodoxy of the Hindu society, probably in the medieval period, they found an issue here that Buddha, who was opposed to Vedic orthodoxy, should be venerated or should be worshipped as God incarnate. They could not digest that situation, and therefore they found a contradiction there. And so they created a story to reconcile that contradiction, a very mischievous story. In this context, we have to understand that all these Puranas are not written, as popularly believed, by one person of one particular period. It is not so. These Puranas are written by a variety of individuals over a period of 2000 years. And as the social practice of religion evolves, the various mythological stories have also evolved along with the evolution of the religion. This is how Puranas, multiple Puranas came into existence. And somebody has extrapolated or interpolated a mischievous story about Buddha into some of these Puranic accounts. The story goes like this, very briefly. So having mentioned it, I am describing it in brief. These asuras were there, the demons. They have to be annihilated by God. But then, what is the problem with them? They are opposed to devatas, and therefore they have to be killed. But then why God cannot kill them? It seems that they were following dharma, therefore they cannot be killed. Dharma gives a protection to them. They have the armor of dharma to protect them, therefore they cannot be killed. Now, if they are following dharma, why to kill them? Why not embrace them? Anyway, so the story is like that. So God takes the incarnation of Buddha and teaches them wrong things and makes them lose their dharma. Thereby, they have lost their protective armor and then they are annihilated. That is the story. It is a very mischievous story. People who believe such irrational, ridiculous stories have to re-look into their thinking. And anyway, except for this story, it is indeed a joyous situation that Hindus worship Buddha as one of the 10 incarnates. On this sacred occasion of Buddha Jayanti, I have a thought to share with the students of Vedanta. I noticed in some circles of Vedantic study, the students were not guided properly. This is what I have noticed. These good meaning students many of them quite young and some of them middle-aged. They come to study Vedanta to different gurus who teach Vedanta. They are very enthusiastic. They have a lot of zeal to learn Vedanta. There is a fire in their heart to learn, to know the truth. But what happens is, over a period of time, they are co-opted into, or they are introduced into a variety of sectarian rituals and ceremonies. Of course, maybe together with some mediocre study of Vedantic texts also, but finally that original fire for truth which they had in their heart was doused. They lose their enthusiasm. They become very routine and mechanical in their approach to the truth, and they are now firmly fixed into ritualism and ceremonialism, and that is how they become more religious than philosophical. So in the process they end up as metaphorically speaking, as a con market gang of Vedantins. Incidentally, this expression, con market gang, was used by our beloved Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, and I have borrowed that expression from him, and I am using that to these mediocre Vedantins who have much less Vedanta in them, very elementary Vedanta they have in them, but they adopt, they submit themselves to elaborate ritualism and ceremonialism, and that is a very unhappy development in my opinion. Therefore, my advice, or you may say I share my thought with these friends who want to study Vedanta. So my thought is that they should study Dhammapadam. They should have an open mind. They should try to expand their vision, and they should not hedge themselves within certain silly structures in the name of tradition and parampara, guru parampara, etc. So by committing themselves to such silly phrases, they hedge themselves within the mediocrity of some Vedanta. They should not do that mistake. They should have a very open mind, and they should strive to expand their vision. I sincerely believe or advise that they should study Bible, they should study Dhammapada. I was looking at Dhammapada. You look at this verse, Manasa chet prasannena bhashateva karotiva tata enam sukhamanveti chhaye vanapayini. The expressions etc. are very Vedic, and the verse can be fitted anywhere in Gita. And when you read Dhammapada, you get a feeling that you are reading Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes you feel as if you are going through an Upanishadic text. That is how Dhammapada reads. And therefore the students of Vedanta, they should study Dhammapada. The word Kamaha of Bhagavad Gita is replaced by a similar word Maraha in Dhammapada, except that the entire description is very similar, and therefore the students of Vedanta, they should study Dhammapada, and they should expand their horizon. Finally, I was looking at the Buddha's teachings. In one place, Buddha was having a dialogue, samvada, with 5 disciples in Saranath. The dialogue is as follows. Is the material form permanent or impermanent? That was the question posed by Bhagavan Buddha. Impermanent, revered sir. That was the answer. But that which is impermanent, is that suffering or happiness? Suffering, revered sir. That then which is impermanent, suffering, and by nature changeable, Is it proper to regard it thus? This is mine, I am this is myself. Is it proper to regard the impermanent that way? No, indeed, revered sir. That was the answer. Then Buddha, is sensation permanent? Is perception permanent? Regarding them thus, O bhikkhus, an instructed Aryan disciple becomes indifferent to material form, becomes indifferent to sensation, becomes indifferent to perception, becomes indifferent to the changeable consciousness, becoming indifferent, asanga. Indifferent is asanga in Vedantic terminology. The seeker becomes free from desire. Through non-desire, he is liberated. Now, if this samvada of Bhagavan Buddha with his disciples is not Vedanta, then what is Vedanta? There cannot be a better presentation of Atmanatma Viveka than this piece. Instead of regarding the impermanent body as impermanent, and instead of disassociating from the body consciousness, what some of us do is to glorify the body in the name of parampara, guru worship, etc. Even the gurus of Vedanta, I sincerely feel, should stop all acts of glorification of the physical body. Every single act of glorification of the physical body goes against the very vision of Vedanta. This should be recognized by the so-called gurus and acharyas of Vedanta in the so-called tradition or parampara. They should recognize this. They should take a cue from Bhagavan Buddha's philosophy, Bhagavan Buddha's Atmanatma Viveka. Finally, there is a question asked all the time, whether Buddha is an atheist. Now, he was not, I sincerely feel that Buddha was not an atheist. Only you can say this much, he was not a theist. He was not a theologian. That Buddha discovered the four noble truths, and the fourth one, as presented by Sri Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, the fourth noble truth discovered by Bhagavan Buddha, it is as follows. When the individual overcomes ignorance, breaks the power of his own deeds to drag him back into expiation, ceases to desire and to regret, and attains enlightenment, he passes into the world of being, the Sat of the Upanishads. That is what I have added. As distinct from that of existence and non-existence, which is free from form and formlessness, from pain and delight, through that state, though that state is not humanly conceivable. That is the fourth truth. It can fit into any Upanishad. It is the Sat of the Chandogya Upanishad. It is the Brahma of the Taittiriya Upanishad. It is the Atma of the Aitareya Upanishad, the fourth noble truth. And therefore, as Sri Swami Ranganathanandaji used to say, Bhagavan Buddha is Atmavadi. He is not Niratmavadi. Some of the Buddhist schools may subscribe to Niratmavada, but not Bhagavan Buddha. Only point is, Bhagavan Buddha did not subscribe to a god to be worshipped with a set of rituals and all that. He did not subscribe to that. He seems to have seen God in the human being, God in the sterling character of a human heart. That is how he seems to have seen God, understood God. In that respect, Bhagavan Buddha is no different from the Upanishads and the Gita. If you carefully examine the standard Upanishads, they do not seem to present a God to the seekers. So they encourage us to investigate, to examine, and to discover the truth. And they do not present a sectarian God to be worshipped in a variety of rituals and ceremonies. Therefore, in that regard, Upanishads and Buddha, Bhagavan Buddha, seem to be on the same page. Therefore, the students of Vedanta should see some of these aspects, and they have to rejig their thinking if needed, and they should strive to learn the vision of Bhagavan Buddha. It is certainly the same as Shankara's vision. I do not see any difference between Bhagavan Buddha, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, and Bhagavan Shankara. So thank you for your attention. Harihi Om Tat Sat.